Very good. And we will move on now to our third presentation, Q&A session rather, to follow up the Kellogg presentation, the wonderful presentation that we had with Dave Grotto, Senior Manager, Wellbeing Affairs and Strategic Partnerships at Kellogg, and Melanie Hall, a registered dietitian nutritionist and Senior Wellbeing and Regulatory Lead. So are Dave and Melanie here? I see Dave, I see Melanie. Hi.
It's good to be seen.
Yes, good to see you. Yes, and thank you both for being with us today. I received several comments, I'll say just right off the top, thanking you for this presentation. So a really great response to it. So look forward to a little bit of follow-up. So we're going to jump right in. Melanie, this first question is for you. I did not know about the PEBT program before today, and I was thrilled to learn about it. Does Melanie know when disbursements will start? I imagine it will be different in any state, but is there any ballpark?
Not that I know of yet. So the issue is all the states, I should say all but maybe one or two, have gone through the paperwork and the due diligence of making sure that the program was approved and ready to move forward. The problem is this is a very brand new program, and the methodology in which a lot of the school districts had to reach the students is gone, right? School isn't in session. So they are definitely doing their work to figure out how to identify the households still, how to disperse the amounts, not to mention how to find the households that are newly eligible for free and reduced because of COVID, verify and go through all of that. And on top of all that, just let all the parents know that this program is a thing. So that is right now what all the states are dealing with. The amount that will be dispersed is going to vary, but this is why the amount still hasn't gone out. When it does go out, it'll be one lump sum that'll be good for an entire year. And of course, the conversation has already started in using this program next year because we already have states and counties saying school's already out before it's begun, right? So all of those kids who would have been getting free and reduced lunches in LA Unified School District, San Diego, the other states that have already announced it's not going to happen. Now the wheels are turning to how we're going to get funds to them. Are we going to continue the PEBT program? So it's still a work in progress.
Okay, and a quick follow-up on that that's already come in. How does that tie to Kellogg? What is Kellogg? Is Kellogg involved? How is Kellogg involved? And if you could just expand a little on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, really what we do is try and make sure we're just on top of all of these things that change what the buying behaviors of shoppers are going to be in store. So as part of the well-being team and working with our government relation teams, we watch these feeding programs. We make sure our sales teams are aware of these feeding programs and our customer teams so that they can relay that information to retailers who may not be aware. And then on the well-being side, Dave and I, of course, we're speaking directly to retail dietitians like you to make sure everybody is aware. We have a team that Dave is on, and maybe he'd like to speak to this, where he and the rest of his team, they partner directly with retailers on how to figure out programming in the well-being space and the philanthropic space. And so we've been kicking around the ideas of, is there a program that needs to exist on the retail side, knowing that PEBT is going to be rolling out? We haven't answered that question yet, but that's definitely something that our sales team has been asking our team about. And Dave, I don't know if you have anything to add to that work.
Yeah, great point, Melanie. And I think it really has a lot to do with the way that we look at fighting hunger at Kellogg's. Is it's not just federal feeding programs, which Melanie, of course, is an expert in and did a really great job in the presentation. But how do we combine that with philanthropy? And I think of a really great example of a program. I think Elisa Sloss from Hy-Vee is on the call today, and they've launched a really great End Summer campaign, right? So Kellogg's is supporting that by supporting 17 food banks, $100,000 donation from those proceeds from selling things such as frosted mini wheats, club crackers. I think there might have been another couple of items as well, where a certain amount of those proceeds go to feeding hunger. So right now in our 2021 planning, we are meeting with the sales teams to talk about how do we have more of a comprehensive approach to fighting hunger. And that requires a dialogue right with our customers that are attending here today. So I will say, here's the invitation. We would love to have those conversations with you about how do we leverage the expertise of one Melanie Hall and federal feeding programs, coupled with philanthropic approaches to helping to really put a dent in hunger.
Well, that's great. And based on the questions I got, it seems like this group is interested in that too. So I'm glad to open that door, and we can certainly start the conversation. We have several questions here about PEBT. In fact, I'll just move to the next one. This person just writes, I just want to say thank you to Melanie Hall for focusing specifically on how to support folks with low-cost solutions and action items on supporting SNAP, WIC, and PEBT efforts, as well as individuals. I loved your novel suggestions for creative use of pantry samples, and I'm eager to hear more creative ideas. Can you share something, Melanie, now?
My personal favorite is using flake cereal or rice or corn square cereal as croutons. And this is something we've been doing a lot in the WIC space. As a matter of fact, we were in a WIC conference right after Fruits and Vegetables got onto the program, where a vendor was passing out salads, and we would literally run by with a box of Special K, and we're just sprinkling it on top of the salad and say, here's your extra crunch. Instead of buying an expensive crouton, right? Depending on the type of crouton someone might buy in store, when you look at like cost per ounce, it's close to like a bottle of wine. Or you could, take some flake cereal, maybe add some seasonings. We have some specific recipes where we add, chili powder and some other things, maybe to put on top of a bean corn salad, or, other like Italian seasonings to put on a flake cereal, and put that on a salad with Italian dressing or something like that. So that's one of my favorite ones, because a lot of people don't think about that. And then the other one that I like is for shredded wheat. We had wheat dippers, and what we did is we made a dip out of peanut butter, and you can either thin it out with milk or yogurt, depending on whichever one you have. And if you are a peanut butter file like I am, that's a really great dip to just sit and nosh on a lot of fiber. And really enjoy that. And if you're not a fan, because it can be a little polarizing, yogurt and just a whisper of nutmeg and cinnamon, and you dunk that mini wheat in there, and you get that nice fall flavor. And again, you got the dairy, it's just a finger food and a lot of fiber, and a way for you to just have a fun snack. So those are two the most recent things that we've done, just playing around with, different ways to use foods that are either just pantry staples or you're getting free for programs like WIC.
Hey, Melanie, let me do a really quick build on that too, because of course, we have a lot of the recipes for our different brands under the Kellogg's umbrella. But I like to think about partnerships, because one of the things that Melanie just talked about was produce, right? If you think about using this to help drive under-consumed food groups, we're dear friends with Produce for Better Health. I'm paying homage to Wendy Reinhardt-Kapsik right now, and she's fantastic. But what is the thing that we know? Whether you're looking at the 5-a-day program, More Matters, we're not getting people to eat enough produce. But what we found is by leveraging the power of our brands can help as a partner to that. We're not the only solutions, but if you think about a bowl of cereal, that's one of the major ways that kids get fruit into their diet, so that's a really simple thing. So I want you to think about that as we're kind of giving these recommendations for solutions about coming back to us. Think about how we can leverage not only these great ideas that Melanie has, but what about those partnerships? Produce for Better Health, a lot of those recipes are on their FMI, which many of you are members of. They also have had a lot of these great recipes and solutions for the COVID pandemic that we've also contributed to.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to put in a quick plug for the wonderful items you included in our goodie boxes. All of these cereals were there, so we've got them in our homes now. Thank you for that. But Melanie, we can take the cereals you sent us and literally try those recipes ourselves at home. So thank you for making that possible.
Oh, no problem.
Sure. Yep, going to switch gears a little bit. I'm just going to read this comment. Food waste has long been a concern for me because I see so much of it. I think it even starts with consumers saying things like, oh, this package expiration date was a week old, so I'll just throw it away. Do you have any ideas on how we can work with you to educate shoppers on things like this? Would Kellogg's ever come out and say, don't pay attention to the expiration dates, that's just for product placement on the shelves? This person says, I think hearing it from you would help a lot.
All right. Well, and Melanie, feel free to chime in here. I'll take a first stab at this. I can't imagine in my lifetime I'm going to hear Kellogg's basically saying, don't pay attention to expiration dates. There's a couple of reasons. One, if you think about why dates are on there, it's not only about food safety, which of course is a huge concern right now, right, with consumers, and packaged goods, quite frankly, are a great safe avenue to provide good nutrition to consumers. But also think about it from that taste experience. If we have one customer that has a bad taste experience because the quality is not there, we probably have lost that purchase intent for the next time around. So really, I was just talking to Melanie about this before, and she's a big fan of Special K red berries, right, Melanie? So what happens sometimes if it goes a little bit beyond that expiration date?
Oh, it is very crunchy. I am tired by the time we get to the end of the bowl. My jaw is a little bit fatigued. Yes. And as I was telling Dave, I said, I really love the cereal and I don't like food waste either. So I'm going to muscle through that box, but it is not as enjoyable as I'd like it to be. So yes, that is definitely the eating experience part of it. So it's hard. It's tricky. And I would say, maybe, one thing we just advise people is, of course, just, checking the packages before you buy them, right? The nice thing about things like cereal is it does have a long shelf life. Unless you have a cereal with a really low turnover and you're in a rural area in a small grocery store, that doesn't get a lot of customers, you're not likely to find something that is close to expiration. So, just that extra, checking the expiration dates before you purchase to make sure you have time, I think would be a really good tip.
Yep. And just one other build as a factoid, because we have what's called a COVID tracker at Kellogg, so we can kind of figure out what's happening with trends. And I was actually somewhat surprised to see that the average person typically has 5 boxes of cereal on hand. So maybe that's one of the things that retail RDs can do, is to say, hey, play bartender, or what we like to call mix more, right? Just kind of blend these, get different taste creations, but, give some love to some of that, boxes that are all the way at the back of your pantry. Rotate them through so you're getting the best use out of them.
That's a good suggestion. That's great. Thank you. Okay, next question. I really like the slide from your presentation that shows how drastically shoppers' emotional thought processes on where, when, and how to grocery shop has changed with the introduction of COVID to the world. At least in the case of my store, we are struggling to catch up with this new reality. Do you have any suggestions on how we can best communicate messages of nutrition, food security, and safety to our shoppers on behalf of companies like Kellogg's?
Melanie?
Sorry, Dave.
That's a big one. We could probably do an entire webinar on that, right? But it's a great question.
Absolutely. Well, I think when it comes to all of those things, right? When it comes to nutrition, and safety, really one of the things we saw, and I can't remember if we touched on it in our presentation, was how many people were pivoting more towards packaged goods because of that safety. Even myself, I remember when after my husband's first COVID trip to the store, one of the things I felt the most comfortable eating was, things like cereal, or things that were, a bag in a box that I know was packed 3 months before COVID was even a thing, right? And so that is how we have seen actually people think about how they're buying stuff, right? And unfortunately, people being scared about, things that people could have touched in the grocery store, and now, levitating toward these things where I said, well, once you get past the cardboard box, you've got this bag that no one has touched. And so that is definitely one thing that consumers themselves are noticing and gravitating towards as far as safety. Nutrition, just reminding people how, foods that do provide nutrition for them, the nutrition you do get in some of these packaged goods. For the longest time, there was this, avoid the center store and only shop the perimeter, but there are a lot of great things in center store. And so, really helping people not feel guilty about choosing canned fruit if they're not comfortable with fresh apples. Although now I'm seeing more retailers bagging up some of their fruit so people feel more comfortable that it hasn't been, can't be tampered with. So I think these are all things that consumers are realizing themselves, but you could also message on as far as their shopping trip. I think the last part of the question was, let's see, we talked about safety, we talked about nutrition. What was that last part about messaging?
Food security, which sort of runs into that. That's, yeah, same topic. Yep.
Absolutely. And food security kind of goes back to the programs that we're talking about. So we, of course, partner with retailers to create these feeding programs. But, you know, there's a great opportunity just to make sure shoppers are aware. You know, again, PEBT, new thing. We're not sure how well states are going to communicate that to parents of students, but all those parents shop at a grocery store. So what does that partnership look like? And this was something we were kicking around with Dave's team. You know, do we help retailers figure out how to say, hey, this is a new program, PEBT or SNAP, you know, WIC, all of those programs, you know, do you have access? Do you know how to sign up? And in each state, there are different pilots that I'm aware of retailers trying to be this voice. I remember back when I used to work for SNAP, we had a "Do you need help buying food" brochure that we would have at grocery stores, and in the back of it, it would give people contact information to call SNAP. So I think it'd be very interesting on the side of retailers to think about, how do we tell our shoppers about this? Is it online? You have so many shoppers looking online to find out how your stores are being clean or whether or not you have click and pick up. Do you also mention there, hey, here's a link to all of these programs. Are you eligible? Understand the people on WIC now are about 50% of the eligible audience in the United States. That was before COVID. Similar numbers with SNAP. So you have a lot of people who were eligible before COVID struck to get this help. And who knows, maybe they're not participating because they don't know. So it might be a great opportunity to think about as on the food security side.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. Melanie, I'm gonna stick with you. This is a question that came in from someone after watching your presentation. This person says that she had not heard of the Morningstar Farms products featured, so was eager to look up the nutrition content. I was disappointed about the sodium numbers, which are in the 400s, especially since these are most appealing to kids. Any talk in the company to reduce the sodium levels and all of these plant-based options?
We're always trying to look for the best way to reduce sodium. So that's a work in progress. And when you look across our portfolio, you're going to see some in the 400s, you'll see some in the 300s. So it depends on exactly which food you're looking for. And anything that we're creating, we got the sodium as low as we could in order to deliver a particular taste experience. But that doesn't mean that's where we're stopping. It doesn't mean we're not trying anymore. And I would say year on year, you're seeing those numbers slowly decrease as we just continue to set targets for ourselves on how to improve.
My only build to that is to really a nod to what Melanie's talking about. We have a lot of food innovation in the pipeline, and that is absolutely something that we look to. It's important to hear what consumers are looking for, and obviously as a company to stay in business and also being a leader in this category, it's important to make sure that we're meeting those needs. The other thing I think which is pretty interesting is when we start looking at these products in the full context of a healthy meal pattern. You know, I think back to the days when I used to be a cardiac rehab dietitian and showing people how to incorporate their favorite foods that may have a little bit more sodium. So I think, you know, we as dietitians are uniquely qualified to show people how to do that. And it's really kind of a great way for people that are trying to up their plant-based nutrition. At the same time, you know, eating moderate amounts of animal protein, that's a great way of kind of introducing it to them. So even if people want to do a blended approach to that, just to try it, just to, again, up their plants. So the total impact of the sodium may not be as much, right? If you're not having an entire full serving, let's say, of a crumble product, just as one example. But there's a lot of different ways that we could kind of work with you, with the retail dietitian, and showing some creative ways of keeping still to a lower sodium intake with using these products.
Yeah, and actually to add to that example, as I mentioned, we have a variety of options to choose from. I think 3 years from now, 3 weeks from now, we will be shipping our newest addition to our portfolio, our incognito Mickey Mouse shaped nuggets, which are definitely targeted towards kids, and sodium in that is 300. So just another example of how we're continuing to bring things down. The ones that you looked up, those I want to say came out almost a year ago. They're relatively new, but this space, this category is so quickly changing. I think we were working on version 2 before we launched version 1. So just keep an eye out. We're continuing to work on the food science behind how we give people what they want, more of what they want and less of what they don't.
Very good, thank you. This question is for Dave. Some of the Kellogg slides about the future of food and global health are, quite frankly, frightening. I think most of us understand that dietitians should and will play a key role in monitoring and advising on the nutrition health of people. Could you talk more about the role that global food companies like Kellogg will play in that effort? To be blunt, at what point is corporate profit secondary to national and global health concerns?
Yeah, and so hopefully everybody had an opportunity to look at our presentation, and there are some fairly startling statistics. We have 10 billion people to feed by the year 2050, and we have a finite amount of land to go ahead and feed people with. So we have to get very creative, right? So we see sustainability efforts throughout the entire supply chain, the food chain, and that's important, to do that. And so we, as a global plant-based company, actually are very heavily invested in this, and we have great partnerships that are looking to leverage those commitments with the World Health Organization, fighting hunger, sustainability efforts, supporting local farmers. Really is going to take a team effort to go ahead and to get to this. I always like to borrow the expression, kind of talking about corporate profits, as the old expression went, I think it was the Sisters of St. Mary, no money, no mission, right? So obviously food companies are in a business to provide food. They have to have a viable business to be able to do that. And so it makes sense to make sure that you're producing foods that consumers want. And those wants change over time. So having a finger on the pulse of that is really, really important to do that. And you can't be myopic with just providing a food that just pleases someone's taste palate. But we do have to look in the future. What about our growing and procurement practices? Are there sustainable practices that Kellogg's has invested in? In fact, we've invested quite heavily in making sure that we're supporting local farmers, making sure that they are producing in a sustainable fashion for now and definitely into the future.
Thank you. It's a nice answer to a very complicated question.
It is complicated. But,
yes. Very much so. And to your point about changing demographics or consumer preferences on food, this is a question for either one of the speakers. I think I read somewhere that cold box cereal consumption has been declining in sales in the US. Why do you think that is? And is it still declining? I've always thought of cereal with added fruit and milk to be a good thing to eat, but I'm surprised at how many shoppers now seem to prefer something else for breakfast or snacks or whatever. But I'm doing my part to reverse that. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I'll go first, and I think Melanie and I both have some thoughts on this. We'll tag team. So, truth of the matter, the trajectory over the past 10 years, if you look at ready-to-eat cereal, which we affectionately refer to as RTEC at the Kellogg Company, has been following the same trajectory as fluid milk. I say we kind of cry in our milk together because they've both been kind of taking a little bit of a nosedive over the years. Ironically, though, however, if you take a look at the impact of COVID, that's changed a little bit. But if you think about even that combination, I was mentioning Nancy before about taking a bowl of cereal and that being a driver for underconsumed food groups. Mm-hmm. So think about that, not only just whole grains, right, which you can get certainly in cereal, but you can also drive milk consumption. You can also drive fruit. Boom, you got three things, and you can't think about something more nutrient dense than that kind of triple threat, if you will, that trilogy of food together. But so what we have found is that people, because of, I think, the COVID crisis, the recession era, whatever you want to refer to this, are looking to those tried and true staples that they grew up with. I just attended another meeting and they had some insights about what's called occasion-based eating. And they realized nostalgia is what's really driving a lot of the cereal consumption, and of also those kind of fun kid brands as well too. But people are really looking for that as a stable source of nutrition and a dependable food also. But we also think that when we start looking at the nutrition value, again, as I was just talking about, the fruit, the milk, the cereal in a bowl is actually a great communication to consumers who are also cost conscious. If you add all three of those together, cereal, milk, and fruit for a serving, that's less than $1. So Melanie, anything that you might have to add on that?
No, I think that's very thorough as to, why it's a great choice. The decline, how COVID has reversed that a bit. I think the only other thing we haven't touched on is just, part of that decline was the protein craze, right? I think a lot of naysayers about the cereal category in general, but I think what they were missing is what we're talking about here, right? The fact cereal is a great driver of a healthy eating pattern. And so we can get hung up on one or two specific things, or we can look at the entire meal and, what it's bringing to that. And I think that's what a lot of people realized when push came to shove during COVID, in addition to the nostalgia, that, they're remembering, oh, you know what, this is enjoyable. I'm getting this, milk, I'm getting fruit. And so, I think that is definitely what drove it, but you're definitely seeing people now talk more about, oh, if I eat a lot of protein, am I getting fiber? And, that's something we talk about, what happens when, you start, listening to concerns about, grains and things of that nature. And again, missing the benefits that come with them. So yes, I think that touches on why the decline really got started. And again, I think we're having a nuanced, more different conversation with COVID, because now people are really saying, well, wait a minute, what's really a good choice given my options?
Mm-hmm. And as a follow-up to that, we've had 2 people ask if the low carb diets and things like that have affected the cereal demand or Kellogg's products in general. What role has the interest in low carb eating played?
Mm-hmm. I think it definitely had an impact. Now, don't get me wrong, cereal is still the #1 food that is eaten for breakfast, and about 30% of cereal is eaten outside of breakfast, so it's still a very popular food. Okay. But, that adds this, I think, doubt and confusion, right? It adds noise when people are making their food choices. If it had done this on their survey, I think last year when they were talking about food and eating patterns, and one of the stats that jumped out to me was, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was a high number of shoppers saying, I doubt my choices. Not, I know I'm making bad choices, just I doubt. I might be making good choices, but I have no idea, which was kind of sad. So, just that dialogue out there makes people wonder whether or not they're making the right choice or feeling guilty about what they're eating. And that can add to the decline while they just start trying different things, trying to figure out what might work for them.
Okay. Very good. We have a question about, what can you tell us about Kellogg products in the pipeline? What's coming that we can be on the lookout for?
Well, we have some products that are coming out. I'm afraid we would have to kill you, though. No.
Oh, I was afraid you were going to say that, Dave. Tease us a little bit.
I'm trying.
Well,
you heard about the Mickey Mouse shaped chicken nuggets from Incognito. So that is 3 weeks away. That was something we were going to launch in April, but because of COVID, we had to push back. So those are shipping out 3 weeks. I'm trying to think of what else has been launched that I can talk about.
We have Incognito, right? The patties, the burgers. Yep. We have those out now at the stores. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Sausages as well. So just the whole Incognito line rolling out. As far as new cereals are concerned, well, we just recently committed to the entire mini wheats line being WIC eligible. Unfortunately, you still have to wait to make sure your state has approved certain foods. So that was a change we made. Sugar's down a little bit in all of the flavors. So blueberry, strawberry, chocolate, our pumpkin spice, all of those are WIC eligible now. And because of what was happening with COVID and some out of stocks, a lot of states actually went ahead and approved those early. So for example, I know in California, all of those flavors, not chocolate yet, that's still pending, but all the other flavors have been approved. Same in New York. So those are some things that are new, not necessarily new foods, just a renovation that is impacted by the WIC program. And those are all the things I can think of off the top of my head that I know are okay to share.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. That's good. We have a hand raised from Allison Stowell. Could you find Allison and she can ask her question? Allison, are you there? Or do you want to just put your question maybe in the chat box?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, while we're waiting for that, we had another question come in. Any chance of new higher protein products and cereals being made without isolated soy protein?
None that I am aware of right now.
Go ahead. Yeah, the only question I was going to ask is maybe a follow-up to that question. Is it because of a concern for a soy allergy or other concerns regarding that?
Yes, I'm sorry, that rest part of that question was using pea protein, for example, instead. Many customers are looking for non-soy based.
Yeah, so I'll make a quick comment about that, and Melanie certainly hop in there as well too. So I think there's a lot to be done for education, because if we take a look at the nutritional attributes of soy protein, that's certainly the most well-researched and longest research of the vegetable proteins, certainly with a strong track record of safety. So not to bore you with my background, but prior to coming to Kellogg's, I used to work at an integrative cancer center for 10 years as their director of nutrition. And the #1 group that we saw there were women with metastatic breast cancer, estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. So there's unfortunately a lot of food myths that abound about soy in any of its forms being potentially promoting of estrogen for either those women or men that are fighting estrogen-driven breast cancer, or potentially making boys effeminate. The list of food myths kind of abound. So I would say I would love to partner with whoever asked the question, or any of the retailer RDs out there, to help educate consumers about the truth about soy protein.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say we love soy as a company, and by and large, it's just because it allows for better flavor profiles, not to mention just cost. We have been looking for some of our different categories, our bars, for example, Special K bars and things of that nature, different sources of soy using milk protein and things like that. And unfortunately, the cost goes up very quickly. And then we have bitter notes that appear in the food, and then you spend more money trying to cover up the bitter notes. And so that is why, by and large, for all of our protein foods, whether it's cereal, bars, Incognito, Morningstar Farms, we still definitely very heavily use soy. We haven't come to a situation yet in any of the categories we operate in where an alternative to soy, aside from the fact, understanding there are allergies, but we haven't come to a point where other protein options provide us with a better food. So that's why we currently use soy the most.
Very good. Well, thank you both, Dave and Melanie, for this terrific presentation and really great Q&A session. I'm posting here your follow-up information. There's Dave's email address. Melanie and Dave's names are down at the bottom, so please take note, and any kind of follow-up you need, send directly to them. That concludes our second session of Shopping for Health 2020. We'll be back again in just a half an hour. So this is just a quick break, everybody, for our core group, who will be back for the closing session, and of course the roundtable discussion and the closing session. So we'll see you back at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.